I'm back. What is up, everybody? My name is Evan Bruce. Welcome back to the channel. If you guys haven't noticed, I haven't updated a video talking about the Daytona 500. That's because I haven't been home for the last couple of weeks, as I was house sitting for a family friend of ours and didn't really have a place to set up and record. So that's why there was no video on the Daytona 500 last weekend, and then this past weekend, the Cup Series in NASCAR was at Atlanta. So I'm going to knock two videos out in one and give my thoughts about the Daytona 500 weekend and the season openers for Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, as well as my reactions to the Atlanta race weekend, as there's a lot to talk about and unpack between the two race weekends. So, without further ado, let's dive in to Daytona 500 weekend. Wednesday night, you had Daytona 500 front row qualifying, which saw Chase Briscoe go on pole with Austin Cindric out on the outside row. Briscoe giving Toyota their first Daytona 500 pole, as Toyota has been on the front row before, most notably with Denny Hamlin, but they haven't won the Daytona 500 pole until Chase Briscoe. And then Austin Cindric lining up on the outside in P number 2 continues the streak of a Ford being on the front row, as last year you had Joey Logano and Michael McDowell for front row and Team Penske on the front row, ironically enough. Then Thursday night was the Daytona duels, which determined the final two opening spots that will be taken, as well as set the rest of the field up for the 500. Another thing to mention as well is two drivers locked themselves in on speed on Wednesday, being the 56 of Martin Truex Jr. for Tricon Garage and Jimmy Johnson for Legacy Motor Club, meaning those two drivers don't have to stress about racing their way in on the duels on Thursday. Which brings us to Thursday. Duel 1 went without a hitch. There was a couple of wrecks that happened, but all in all, steady, clean racing. Bubba Wallace ended up winning duel number 1, meaning he will start third, which gave him his best starting position in the Daytona 500. Helio Castroneves, however, was involved in a wreck in duel number 1, which meant he had to rely on his provisional, meaning there would be 41 cars to start the Daytona 500. The only downside to Castroneves having that provisional is not earning points or prize money using the provisional. So basically, it's a position, your race, but it means nothing. We also saw Junior Motorsports lock themselves into the Daytona 500, racing their way in, beating Jimmy Johnson and J.J. Yaley in the duels, giving Junior Motorsports their Cup Series debut in the number 40 with Traveler Whiskey. Duel number 2, however, is when the controversy starts that set the tone for the rest of the weekend and even heading into Atlanta. Most of Duel 2 went by pretty fair. Then at the end, a big wreck happens towards the end of the pack, and and Austin Cindric and Eric Jones are side by side, coming to the line. At the line, photo finish. Eric Jones looks to have won duel number 2 and will start 4th in the Great American Race. But NASCAR called the caution just 200 feet away from the start-finish line, which changed the order of the field, because at the line, Eric Jones was the leader. But when the moment of caution came out, it was Austin Cindric with a nose out in front as the wreck happened. Elton Sawyer basically said that, we messed up. We want to try and maximize the amount of time that the safety crews have to respond to an accident. But in my opinion, if you're within a certain point on the last lap, don't throw the caution, especially when you've got drivers in a pack coming to the start-finish line off of turn 4. That extra second isn't going to mean anything if the safety crews have to wait until everything comes to a stop to respond. So it doesn't, to me, that doesn't matter if anything off of turn 4 happens. But that was the big controversy. On to Friday. Controversy again strikes as NASCAR, kind of consistent with Thursday, calls a caution on the last lap as the drivers wreck off of turn number 4. As the field was frozen, we saw that Parker Kligerman and Corey Heim were the two drivers that really kind of broke away from the pack as they wrecked. Parker Kligerman out in front, crosses the line. Everyone believes that Parker Kligerman has won this race, even Kligerman himself. Big celebration for Henderson Racing, as this is, I believe, their second career win in the Truck Series. Maybe third, all with Parker Kligerman. But that's not where the controversy happens, though, with the wreck on the back on turn 4. No. Controversy happens after the flag has been waved and after the victory lane photos have been taken. NASCAR disqualifies Parker Kligerman and gives the win to Corey Heim. The reason for the disqualification is the rear end of the truck being an eighth of an inch too low for NASCAR standards. Henderson Motorsports submitted an appeal and basically said, we only failed because of NASCAR telling us to do something to the truck at the end during inspection. Because the rear of the truck met the height before they measured it, and then they asked us to do something to the truck, measured it again, and it was an eighth of an inch low. Now, most of this can also happen from being in the race, as heights can change during a race, especially at a place like Daytona where bumping can happen and kind of crumple the rear end a little bit. NASCAR dismissed the appeal, meaning that Corey Heim was the official winner for Daytona. A lot of fans, myself included, were a little displeased with NASCAR's decision, as this is now the second win that Parker Kligerman's been robbed of. If you guys know, last year Parker Kligerman had the Charlotte-Roval playoff race won in the Xfinity Series, but NASCAR's inconsistency strikes again, and they call a caution for a car stuck underneath the tire barrier that was stuck there for about 3/4 of the lap. Call it last second right as Parker Kligerman is mere inches away from the start-finish line, sets up an overtime finish, and Parker Kligerman ends up losing the race and being eliminated from the playoff in such. So again, this is kind of, you gotta feel bad for Parker Kligerman, as he almost got a win in his final full-time season in NASCAR. He finally gets a win in the Truck Series with Henderson Motorsports, and then fails post-race inspection. Saturday, the Xfinity race. NASCAR, you can't really blame inconsistency here, but the Xfinity Series went off as normal. You had a big wreck on lap 6 that took out some heavy contenders, like Carson Kvapil, Brandon Jones, and Connor Zilisch were involved in that wreck. Carson Kvapil and Connor Zilisch were both able to continue. Brandon Jones was done in his first race back with Joe Gibbs. However, towards the end of the race, it was pretty much the RCR show between Austin Hill and Jesse Love in the 21 and the 2. Austin Hill both swept the first 2 stages, but then had a mechanical problem in the final stage coming in the closing laps and ended up retiring from the race, which gave the realm to Jesse Love. Now, before entering this race, Jesse Love has one career win at a drafting track at Talladega, and that came last year for RCR. So Jesse Love is no stranger to leading and winning on a super speedway. White flag comes into the air, and as the leaders are taking the white flag, a massive wreck happens behind that collects Ryan Sieg, Josh Williams, Justin Allgaier, a bunch of cars as they're coming across the line into the tri-oval. NASCAR throws the caution, field is frozen, which means that Jesse Love is the winner, and RCR has gone on to win the last, 3 or 4 opening races for Xfinity, with 2 or 3 of them coming from Austin Hill, and then this one coming from Jesse Love. So the RCR supremacy at Daytona still remains, as RCR has been undefeated the last few years. Austin Hill, his reign of terror at Daytona came to an end very quickly and very briefly. Now on to the Daytona 500. And the biggest talking point is not the finish, but more so Ryan Preece. Coming towards the end of the race, within 10 laps to go, the big, not really a big one, but the biggest wreck happens as Christopher Bell gets turned around off the nose of Cole Custer, hard into the outside wall, comes back across the track and collects the 60 of Ryan Preece along with the 43 of Eric Jones. Now, this wreck was kind of spectacular in a way, but also very frightening as Ryan Preece popped a wheelie and then blew over and did a barrel roll. And this is the first time I have seen a car do a frontal blowover. You know, you look at all these flips that have happened in the sport. You know, you look at Corey LaJoie last year at Michigan. Car gets sideways, car blows over. Josh Berry at Daytona just a week later spins sideways, blows over. You know, we've had cars that have spun backwards and have blown over, like Elliott Sadler, Rusty Wallace, to name a few. But we've never seen a car blow over from the front. And this is the second time that Ryan Preece has flipped upside down. Ironically, both happening at Daytona, as if you remember back in 2023, Ryan Preece had that vicious barrel roll down the back straightaway through the grass portion, which caused Daytona and NASCAR to remove the grass from the back straightaway to prevent the cars from digging in once they flip over. As we've seen in many times, the flips themselves haven't been as bad, but once the cars dig into the grass, it causes the violent nature of it. You look at Rusty Wallace with his two flips at both Daytona and Talladega. He blew over as soon as he hit the grass, barrel roll, violent. Davey Allison at Pocono, hit the grass, barrel roll, violent. You can even throw in Kyle Busch at Talladega in, I want to say it was 2005, in I think the Xfinity Series race. Flips over, barrel rolls, right? Or kind of slides on his roof. Once he hits the grass on the apron, that's kind of when it gets a little violent and kind of barrel rolled a few times. Even Corey LaJoie at Michigan slid most of the backstretch on his roof, then hitting the grass that enters turn 3 and kind of violently flipped back on its wheels. So NASCAR removed the grass on the back straightaway of Daytona to reduce the violent nature of these flips with cars digging into the ground and causing this flip. But Ryan Preece, with his experience and astronaut training, as you will, goes up into the air, barrel rolls, slams back down on the grass, and after he was checked and released from the medical care center, he had this to say.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the diffuser or what that makes these cars like a sheet of plywood when you walk out on a windy day, but you know, when the car took off like that and I got real quiet, all I thought about was my daughter. So I'm lucky to walk away, but we're getting really close to somebody not being able to. So very grateful for, yeah, that sucks. We just had, I mean, this thing was fast, and you know, thanks to Build Submarines, thanks to Kroger, Castrol, Mohawk, Fifth Third Bank, everybody at RFK Racing. It's frustrating when you end your day like this.
We're glad you're okay. Thanks, Ryan.
So some really interesting points from Ryan Preece there. One thing that really caught my attention was the fact that he mentioned that it got quiet once the car got up into the air. And as a driver, I can imagine how scary that can be as everything around you just goes quiet. The engine in the car goes quiet and you hear nothing, and you just brace yourself for what's going to happen. And I also agree with Ryan Preece to an extent. Something needs to be done to these cars to keep them on the ground. And Ryan Preece is no stranger to having vicious crashes. You know, you look back to 2020 when he was with JTD Doherty, now Hayek Motorsports. He had a violent crash at Kansas where he went almost head on into the wall and went on its side and almost flipped over from that. And then you look at 2023 or 22 when he first went to Stewart-Haas. plows into the side of Kyle Larson. Both him and Kyle Larson's car go into the R&D development center to have a look at what happened as the door caved in on Kyle Larson's car from a head-on impact. And then, of course, with the flip in 2023 through the infield, and now this, Ryan Preece has had a lot of violent wrecks. And yes, we've had a lot of drivers come upside down. We've had a few flips in the next-gen car, but Preece is the first to have two really violent flips. Yes, you could say Corey LaJoie, but both of Preece's flips have been blowovers, where one of LaJoie's flips was a blowover. The other one was kind of pushed upside down. And Ryan Preece saying, I'm not going to be the one that is made an example of. Meaning, if something happens and I'm the one that it happens to, I don't want to be that example. Really, nobody should be the example, but he doesn't want it to be him. And that's a scary thought for NASCAR. And a lot of the problems that have come over with this next-gen car is the flat underbody, in my opinion. As if you look at an airplane wing, the curve of a wing is on the top, and the bottom is flat, and that's what pushes the airplane up and keeps it up into the air, as all that air pressure pushes it up and pushes it into the air. And you're getting that with this next-gen car. You look at the Le Mans cars from years ago when the Mercedes flipped going down the hill. It was because it had a flat bottom, and once air went underneath it, it pushed it up, and up it went. That is what's happening with this next-gen car. Yes, we've had blowovers with the previous generations, but for the most part, air was able to dissipate through the car and through the body. Where there's really no escape with the flat underbody and the diffuser, as it acts as a wing, and it pushes these cars up into the air. And we've seen it time and time again. The very first super speedway race with the next gen, Harrison Burton blows over. You've had Ryan Preece blow over twice. You've had Corey LaJoie blow over. Josh Berry's blown over. Frickin' McDowell almost blew over in front of the entire field. He got up on its door. Thankfully, came back down. But we've seen so many of these accidents where cars are lifting off the ground. You look at Chase Briscoe in the first year at Daytona in the summer race. Spins around, car starts coming off the ground. We think he's going to blow over. There's something needs to be done to the underbody of these cars, to keep these cars grounded. And my biggest thing is getting rid of the flat underbody and the diffuser on the super speedways and faster tracks. They've gotten rid of the diffuser for the short tracks. Has it made the racing better? Not really. But it's possible to remove the diffuser and remove the underbody from these cars. It is possible. Why NASCAR is reluctant to do it, I don't know. But something needs to be done, and that is the key thing that needs to go on the next-gen car. Then the second sort of talking point in the 500 is the finish. Austin Cindric, Denny Hamlin look to have a battle for the ages coming to the line. White flag in the air, down the back straightaway. A third challenger approaches with Cole Custer. They're 3 wide. Next thing we know, wreck. Hamlin and Cindric get turned off the nose of Briscoe and Custer getting together, and they get into a wreck. The leaders wreck. William Byron sneaks through. Tyler Reddick sneaks through. And we think, caution's going to come out here. Last lap of the 500 in overtime, there's going to be a caution. They go into turn 4. Still no caution. They're still wrecking in turn 3. They come off of turn 4 down the front stretch into the tri-oval. They're going to let them race back. NASCAR hesitated in throwing the caution and let the 500 finish under green, giving William Byron his second Daytona 500 win and back-to-back, becoming the 5th driver to do so. Tyler Reddick finished second. Jimmy Johnson finished third, which is kind of surprising considering his luck with Legacy Motor Club. They haven't really been able to finish races. So for him to finish third in the Great American Race is a big deal. But the biggest thing is NASCAR not throwing the caution on the last lap. And that kind of threw the inconsistency banner right into the window. Everybody's like, okay, you can't go one way for 2 of the 3 races and then go the complete opposite for the next race. Like, you can't do that. Like, if you're going to call the cautions on the last lap when they're this close away from the start-finish line, you have to call the caution on the last lap when they're that far away. You know? And they didn't. Personally, in my opinion, anything after turn 2, keep it green. Because by the time the cars get back there, after the checkered flag, they're going to be wound down, and they're not going to come barreling into the crash. So anything from exit of turn 2 all the way to the start-finish line, boys, have at it, in my opinion. Now, if it's like a really bad wreck, like someone flipping through the infield and parts flying everywhere, and the safety of the driver is at stake, then yes, throw the caution. But if it's like a pileup and it dissipates, and by the time the field gets back there after the line, it's going to be wound up at that point, don't throw the caution. You know, that's my assessment of it. Fast forward on to Atlanta. Again, 3 series at Atlanta between Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Trucks and Xfinity doing a doubleheader on Saturday, and then the Cup race on Sunday. Trucks, for the most part, not a whole lot of controversial moments. My biggest gripe, however, with the truck race on Friday was the commentary team. A lot of people dislike Jamie Little in the commentary booth. I'm not one to really voice my opinion, but the finish, good God. You had a down to the line kind of a photo finish at the end of the truck race between Kyle Busch and Stuart Friesen. And without the commentary, it looked to be really exciting. But the call on the finish was brutal to listen to. And don't get me wrong, I like Jamie Little. She's a hell of a pit reporter, and it's very awesome to see someone like Jamie Little in the region and realm of motorsports as a commentator in a very male-dominated segment, and being that voice, that female voice in the NASCAR broadcasts. But she can't do color commentary. Her and Phil Parsons are arguably, like, it's nails on a chalkboard, as they are just so dry and boring. And the finish, like, just listen to this.
Out at turn 4, white flag is in the air. Stuart Friesen leads.
Kyle with the run. Here goes the same move. This isn't as big of a run as he had, though.
He's not going to clear him.
This is going to be all about the push down the back straightaway.
Bailey Curry to the bumper of Kyle Busch.
Oh, and no help for Stuart Friesen.
They are bunched up into turn 3.
Oh, I like Stewart's
I like his spot. Stewart's looking okay. He doesn't have a good push behind him, though. It's going to be about the side
They're
draft.
getting squirrely behind him. Side by side, checker flag in the air. Looks like Kyle Busch
pulls the perfect late side draft.
I think that's like the most boring call to what otherwise would have been a very exciting finish. Like, yes, Kyle Busch won. A lot of people aren't going to be happy about Kyle Busch winning, but it was overall a really good finish. I was getting excited for the finish. And then, like, looking back, I was like, wow, that call was kind of boring, and I kind of forget about it. Like, I kind of forget about the finish, because a lot of the times, you know, you look at the finish to the Cup race last year, Mike Joy brought in energy to that finish, and it's, apart from it being a 3-wide finish, the call made it memorable. You know, you look at the NBC portion of the broadcast season, and you have Lee Diffie, And the calls that he's had in the last half of NBC's season have been incredible. Like the Daytona finish with Jeff, your little boy has done it. He's won at Daytona. And even the Watkins Glen call between Gisbergen and Buescher, that call, it makes it a very legendary finish, not one, but two, it makes it a legendary call that you will remember for years, decades, forever. You know? That's not going to be one of them. Like, the finish might go down as a good finish in the Truck Series, for Truck Series standards, but the call sucked. And then the Xfinity race, later on that night, Austin Hill swept all stages, stage 1, stage 2. Goes on to win the race. But the controversy is NASCAR deciding to not throw the caution. Start wrecking on the back straightaway as Ryan Sieg wrecked along with Parker Retzlaff and Christian Eckes right in the front of the field, kind of mid-pack. No caution, let him race to the line. Austin Hill claims his win and is now won at Atlanta in the drafting configuration 5 times. He has won there 5 times in a row. Dominance, straight dominance for Austin Hill at Atlanta. It is a hometown track for him. It is a hometown track for Bennett's Transportations. It's just pure domination. You can't script it any better. But a lot of fans applauded NASCAR. It was like, okay, so you set the precedent in the 500 by letting them race to the line when a wreck is happening. Cool. Sunday morning, our good old boy Elton Sawyer makes a statement during the drivers' meeting saying they should have called a caution on the wreck at the end of the Xfinity race. And if something like that were to happen again, it will get called. Well, boy, oh boy, was he true to his word. Last lap of the Atlanta Cup race, it's setting up to be another 3-wide finish with Christopher Bell, Carson Hocevar, and Kyle Larson. And NASCAR throws the caution before they're even into turn 3. Why, you may ask? Because Josh Berry spun and wrecked. It was less cars in the Xfinity race, but they throw the caution, robbing us of a Kyle Larson Super Speedway win, Carson Hocevar's first career win, or another 3-wide finish with Christopher Bell winning. They robbed us of that. Because NASCAR loves to be inconsistent. Always being inconsistent. And a lot of fans are extremely pissed about that. They didn't like it. They also had a gripe with Kyle Larson, who has never won on a super speedway, had a chance to do it, cleared himself in front of Austin Cindric, wrecked Austin, causing Austin Cindric to slam into the outside wall and wrecking, which set up the overtime finish, which set up the 3-wide potential finish that got ruined with Josh Berry spinning and wrecking and NASCAR calling the caution. NASCAR, fuck are we doing? You get too trigger happy on the caution when you don't need to be, and then you're reluctant to call the caution when it needs to be. Indianapolis 2024. But let's get consistent. That's all we want, is to be consistent. Stay consistent with your calls. It's ridiculous. It's to the point where every single fan is calling for the entire room to be gutted, for Elton Sawyer to get gutted, and for Phelps to get gutted. Like, they want them gone. They want a clear house, clean slate. Arguably, I agree with them. It's ridiculous that in the last 2 years, we've had some very questionable calls. You know, Indianapolis last year when Ryan Preece was stuck on the apron on the last lap and was sitting there until Larson got the white flag, and then they called the caution. For Parker Kligerman's win at Charlotte, that got taken away because a car was underneath the barriers for 3/4 of a lap, and they decide till he's 2 inches away from the line to call the caution. The 500, they let him race to the green when there's a massive crash behind the leaders and in front of the field, but they call a caution on the duels when they're 200 feet from the line. Like, NASCAR is so inconsistent with their calls that it's mind-boggling how some of these calls get made. And then for them to come back the next day and say, yeah, we fucked up. We made a mistake. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, I get mistakes are going to happen and calls aren't going to be consistent. But when it comes to cautions and when it comes to ends of races, especially at super speedways, I get it's the part of the nature, but at the same time, you gotta be consistent and you gotta set a standard. And within the last few years, NASCAR has not set a standard. You know, you look at the duels, you look at the 500, you look at Atlanta in this year alone. You look at the super speedways last year. Talladega, you had a massive wreck in front of the field when Keselowski spun McDowell off a bad block. And you had a car upside down, 2 cars almost upside down along the wall. You don't throw the caution, you allow the race to go green, and you allow Tyler Reddick the win as he snuck through. But when another massive crash is happening in the back of the field, when the leaders are side by side, you call the caution. Just figure it out. Get it together. Be consistent. That's all we want as fans, is to be consistent. For the love of all that is holy, be consistent. That's all we want. That's all we beg, is to be consistent. Those are like my big takeaways from the last 2 weeks of NASCAR, as we're now heading into COTA next week. So we go Super Speedway, road course. So the start of the schedule is going to be very wonky. The points is very wonky as it stands. But hopefully after this weekend, we get to really see who the real contenders are, who is going to be a threat, who's not going to be a threat, who's going to be the front runners, who's going to be the favorite to win the season. And it's going to be interesting from this point out. After COTA, I think things are going to start settling down. I will be at the Vegas races this year. I will be at all 3 races in March for the Pennzoil 400 weekend. I just got my tickets. I just need to get garage passes and everything else that's sorted. And I've got a couple of things coming in to help further enhance those videos, like these clips that I just bought, so you guys can hear me a lot better and more clearly. These will be more in use for these types of videos, as well as in the races and vlogs, whether it's the theme parks or at the racetrack. You'll be able to see these a lot more. And then I'm also getting a new ring light, as the light is very dim, and it's on its brightest setting. So it is dying. It's time for a new one. I've had this for 2-3 years now. And then I'm also getting a new case for the camera that you are sitting in, because a couple of things are missing from that case, and I need to get a new one. So those are going to be some things that are going to further enhance these videos. I hope you guys like that I'm investing more time into it. I hopefully am able to start doing more videos regularly, different types of videos, as I am currently working on another Fortnite video. As the new season's just dropped, and let's just say it's pickles galore, to say the least. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like that, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload again. We also have Instagram and Twitch. Go ahead and follow those. The usernames are both the same. And as always, I will see you guys in the very next episode. Peace.